Welcome to our podcast, Parsha Vayishlach, Tavshin, Hey Aleph. Parsha Vayishlach is a big showdown between Yaakov and Esav. It is well known. Parsha Vayishlach is the parsha that the Tanoim used to read when they had to go to Rome to face off with Esav and later Dairis. So the meeting between Yaakov and Esav, this week's parsha, was the prototype, was the game plan, the playbook of how Klal Yisrael handles with Esav. There are a lot of interesting ramazim as to what Yaakov's kavanas were over here in the way he handled with Esav, the ramazim, and the different matanas that he sent him, and the different lashonos that are being used as to what Yaakov's avodah was. We'll talk about how some of the ramazim about avodas Yom Kippurim is also a showdown between Klal Yisrael and Esav, because Esav ultimately is a koyach hara of the Welt, and Klal Yisrael, in order to do its avodah, has to ultimately.
But the Satan is not there.
Ultimately, the Satan has to be placated. All Satan has to be neutralized, right? The Satan has to be toned down somehow. And one of the ways that Satan is toned down, al pi soid, is on Yom Kippur. We give the Satan his chelik. He's not being mekatrig on Yom Kippur. But we give him his chelik. The siyar mishtalech, the avodah, the siyar mishtalech, which is a very unusual avodah. You take a siyar and you throw it off you bring it al eretz gzeira, and you throw it off the tzaik, right? And it ends up in the Yivarim, halfway down the mountain. It's just a very unusual avodah. Is it a carbon? It's not a carbon. It's aligned with a Sar la Hashem, and then you have a Sar la Azazel, and all the references between what a Sa'ir is. Esav is Sa'ir, right? Avi Edaim, and you talk about his Sa'ir is a goat. A goat is an Indian of Izim. Seir Miraktin Sham, a goat has to do with Kaychas Hatuma, right? The Shadim.
That's what the Rivka put on his hands.
Yeah.
Put on his arms. The
goat.
Fur of the
Well, the Yisayir. Right, but a goat is the pasuk tells us Seirim Miraktim Sham. The Indian of Seirim, it has to do with Shadim, or the Indian of Seirim Kaychas Hara, which ultimately all Kaychas Hara is personified in Esav, because as we know, the Malach of Esav who shows up in this week's parsha, the Samach Mem, is the Samach Mem himself, right? He's the head of all of all the Karech Serah, and he is the Sar Shel Esav, the Samach Mem. So Mela, dealing with Esav, is dealing with Esav on a personal level between Yaakov and Esav, but ultimately it's on a much greater level of Klal Yisrael neutralizing the koyach hara of the samach mem in order to be able to do our avodah. And that's one of the kavanos of the Sar Mishtalech and Yom Kippur, is that as Klal Yisrael is having its deepest interaction, its most we'll say private interaction, the lefnai v'lefnim on Yom Kippur. At that point, the Satan is being kept busy with a Sar Mishtalech that Kilu is not a hakrava to him, but it is something that it is what's described as, I believe it's described as any time HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives hashpah to the Koyach Zerah also need to live. They need to have hashpah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how do they get hashpah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu? When HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives hashpah to Klal Yisrael, it's derech panim. He faces. It's fine. He faces Klal. So when you like someone, right, and you give them something, so you face them and you give it to them. Masha Ein Kain, when you don't like someone, you throw it you turn your back on them and you just throw it behind you. It's called derech acharayim. So that's what this Indian of the Sar la Azazel. It's derech acharayim. You chuck it down the mountainside. And this is the way the koyach hara gets its chiyus, which keeps it busy, keeps it happy, keeps it subdued in Olam Hazeh.
Begrudgingly.
So this is one of the kavanos we'll Muslim of the Sar Mishtalech from the Rebbe, Meir Horowitz Mijikav, the Imrei Noyam, who has some nice Muslim on the Sar Mishtalech and Parsha Vayishlach. The pasuk tells us, but just we'll be marked with a different shtickle of the Imrei Noyam, with the Akdama of a shtickle we probably said in the past. The pasuk says, so Yaakov is coming. This is a big showdown. It's not just a personal showdown, Yaakov and Esav. Like we said, it's Ma'isa Avisim L'Banim. It's going to be a showdown for Klal Yisrael L'Dairi Dairis, and ultimately, right, the tools that Klal Yisrael needs to ultimately win the Yetzer Hara, which is personified by Esav. The pasuk tells us that Yaakov is very concerned. Vayira Yaakov ma'od vayetzalai. He's very concerned in his meeting with Esav. What's the double lashon of Vayira Yaakov ma'od and vayetzalai? He's afraid, and vayetzalai, and he's bitzar. What's the double lashon of Vayira and vayetzer? So this is something, I don't know if I said it last year. We spoke about the Rashi, and last year about Rashi says the pshat is Vayira Yaakov ma'od shema yahareg, maybe he'll kill. V'shem vayetzer lo shema yahareg acher, maybe he'll kill other people. Right? That's Rashi. There's two concerns. He's afraid he's going to get someone from his family is going to get killed, and he's also afraid he's going to kill someone from Esav's group of men. And the whole shaila was what was he worried about killing someone from Esav? Esav is a right. If you're allowed to kill him, why was he concerned about killing from Esav? So we said over from the Gaon last year. We went into a little detail. Shem Yaharag Acher, Machman Acher, Machem is Rameir, right? And Rameir was Benan Shalgerim that came from Esav, and Meili was afraid that if he was shter Esav, who knows how that's ultimately from Esav, the Nitzaitzes HaKadoshim over there that are going to come out and benefit Klal Yisrael. And Meili, that was a pshat from the Gaon that we said, Shem Yaharag Acher, Man Acher is Rameir, that he may affect Rameir, who ultimately came from descendants of Esav. However, the Alshich says he says a very interesting pshat. Right, the Alshich says, you know the pshat from the Alshich? Vayir Yaakov ma'od vayetzalai. He says Yaakov was very afraid, right? So Yaakov's very afraid. He was like Nispal. I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? Right? There's a lashon of the Medrash. Lashon of Yaakov said, like, where did my Amunah go? Right? What happened to my Amunah? Zakta Alshich, Vayir Yaakov ma'od. He was afraid, and he was so stunned. How could I be afraid? What happened to my Amunah? Right? Vayetzalai. He was very bitzar that his Amunah wasn't intact. Okay, he could not believe that here he was faced with a nisayon of Yisrael, and he's afraid. How could I be afraid? This is the place where you have to pull out the Amunah, the bitachon that he gained over the last 22 years. He should be fortified in his Amunah. Why should he be afraid of Esav? Right? Memel, that was the Asher teaches of Vayir Yaakov ma'od vayetzalai. So I said a hemshech to this. I think other people said it also. Right? The hemshech of the pasuk is also kivim makli avarti hayard min azeb ata yisi l'shnei machanais. Right? He says, when I came to Beis Laban, when I came to Haran, all I had was my makel. Right? And ata yisi l'shnei machanais. So the Pashas is that he said, I came with nothing, now I have so much bracha. He was afraid, maybe Shem Yigam Achet, I've used up all my schusim, right? He says, so that's why he was afraid. He was afraid maybe he lost up his chusim, because besides the fact he should have had Emunah, he also had to have tachas from a Kadosh Baruch Hu. Kadosh Baruch was going to take care of him. So he looked back and said, I have so much bracha from Kadosh Baruch Hu that I don't deserve, right? Or maybe I did deserve it, but now it's all used up. And Memela, that's why he lost his, that's why he was afraid.
Well, he's afraid he's getting his chard.
Yeah, that's But the Gemara says Shem Yigam Achet, right? But also Pshat is a bit pashtas. He felt he had so much bracha, and he was paid up already. What?
Didn't he know who he was?
So you have to look at it as being an anivas l'chayr. However, I said a pshat amol azay. We'll say a story for the Baal Shem Tov, just to bring out the point. The Baal Shem Tov, when he was younger, he was very gifted, and he was very into Kabbalah. At a young age, he was saying Shemus Malachim, and I don't know exactly what his game plan was, but it sounded like he was a kid, and he was saying Shemus Malachim and seeing what happens when you say Malach's name. We say Malach's name, the Malach shows up. He said one time he was mashpia the Malach of Eish, and the Malach came down from Shemayim and got a little out of control and burnt down the city, burnt down the town. So from that point, whatever age it was, a young child, he says, that's it. No more Kabbalah Maisius. Finished with this. We don't play games with. We don't get involved in Kabbalah Maisius. The Avodas Hashem has to be b'tmimus, and with tmimus everything works with Emunah. And that's from then on. The Baal Shem Tov said everything he did b'Emunah. His ma'asim were not using Kabbalah Maisius. All his ma'asim were done with pure Emunah. One time he came to a river or some sort of stream. He had to get across. He took his gartel, rolled it across, walked across his gartel, and that was the way he crossed his Yarden over there. He turned to his Talmidim. He says, "Listen, I don't use Shemus like I told you. Stop using Shemus. I walked across with pure Emunah. With pure Emunah." Meil Yaakov said, "Kiva makli avartis Yarden azezak Rashi." He split the Yarden. How do you split the Yarden? Right? Avada with Emunah. So Yaakov was saying, when I came to Beis Lavan and my Emunah was so stark, I was able to split the Yarden with pure Emunah. And look at me now, I'm afraid of Esav, a Basar V'dam. How could it be? That was how he was by Yetzirah. He was Nispal. How could he be so? How could he be so afraid? The Imrei Noam says an interesting pshat. Rashi says, Shem Yahareg, Shem Yahareg, Shem Yahareg Achem. Shem Yahareg, Shem Yahareg Achem. Right? Maybe someone from him would get killed. And Shem Yahareg Achem. So he says the pshat as I say. That that when a tzaddik has to be pareh from a rasha, he has to be ma'ir dinim on a rasha. So being ma'ir dinim, like we just said, the Baal Shem Tov brought down the Saravesh. You bring down the Saravesh. Who knows, right? Whether things are going to work out exactly the way you plan. So when a tzaddik has to be ma'ir dinim on a rasha, there's a risk. Ma'ir dinim on the rasha. How do you know that the dinim are going to be perfectly focused, perfectly directed towards the rasha? Maybe it's going to spring back and come back to bite you. So Meila Zakti Meinayim, that when a tzaddik has to be ma'ir dinim on a rasha, he has to have two kavanas. One kavanah is to be ma'ir dinim on the rasha, but at the same time he has to have an opposite kavanah to be ma'ir rachamin. Okay, the way he's being ma'ir din, he's also being ma'ir rachamin. And he says as the pasuk says in Tehillim, ki rega ba'apai chayim b'irtzaynai. Okay, there's rega ba'apai, there's af, and then there's chayim b'irtzaynai. So he says as that Yaakov, again, the Arizal, so he's bringing it from the Arizal, that Yaakov is afraid that right? He was afraid to kill other people because he knows killing other people may backfire on him also. So he's afraid Asa is going to kill him, and he's afraid by killing others, by being married, that's going to come back and backfire on him. So he said,
Isn't that alone is pretty terrible? If it goes out of control and kills other people, why?
No, Asa he has to kill. Rishon is allowed to kill. Right, so that's the real kasha on Rashi is, why is he afraid to kill other people? Who the other people? It's Esav, right? He's supposed to kill. He's a right. Terah says by killing Esav, by killing Hashem, that's also can backfire on the good guys also. He brings down an interesting remez, a little some shameless over here. He says there is a shame. It's bigamacha ayin beis, so it probably has to do with ayin beis. Okay, the isis of the shame are a mem, a lamed, and a beis. Okay? B'gamacha ayin beis. Ayin beis is a powerful shame. I mean, all shames are powerful. Ayin beis is a shame. The shame of chachma, we'll say, right?
And this shame of the chesed, the ifrim.
What number 2 you saying?
Yeah.
Not sure. So it says. So he says a shame. No, it's a shame yud beis. I think so. So he says that there's a shame that you use to be mashpil shame. There's a shame that's big machal and beis. It's a mem, a lamed, and a beis. Okay, a mem and lamed beis. is Rashi Tevis. Gemara and Brachos, we all know. Mutter lehiskaros barishayim. Okay? And that's maybe just be a simon, right? But mutter lehiskaros barishayim is a simon of the shame they actually use to be megar barishayim, right? Which is a mem, a lamed, and a base. Okay? He says the makar of this shame, right? The makar of the shame is the shame of chesed. Because you have a shame in right? You say no gibor darshe yichudcha kevav hashamrim. Okay? No gibor darshe yichudcha kevav hashamrim. Yichudcha kevav hashamrim is Rashi Tevis a yud, a chaf, and a shin, which is a shame of chesed, which is yichudcha kevav hashamrim. You guard tzaddikim like the apple of your eye, right? Like the kevav haseinai. Yichudcha kevav hashamrim. That's the shame of chesed. Ba'at bash, the shame of chesed gets flipped around to the shame of dinim of a mem, right? The yud becomes a mem, right? The chaf becomes a lamed, and the shin becomes a base. Okay, and you get the name, and you get the shame of a mem, a lamed, and a base. So you have such a shame. If a person is using this shame to be ma'aradinim, he has at the same time he has to be mechaven for the shame of chesed of yichudcha kevav hashamim. Okay, so he says that the pasuk is kirega ba'apai. When a person wants to be ma'arer dinim on rishayim, so he has to be ma'arer the rega af. Where to get the din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? You have to be ma'arer the rega af. Kirega ba'apai. He says kirega ba'apai. Rega af is chayim birtzoinai. Rega af and birtzoinai are also the same gematria, right? That rega af is a person ma'arer the rega af. At the same time, he has to be ma'arer chayim birtzoinai. That for Klal Yisrael, for the tzaddikim is going to be chayim, and for the Rishonim is going to be rega af. So he says that Yaakov was sending matanis to Esav. The matanis to Esav are to neutralize Esav. What are we neutralizing Esav with? With rega af. Okay, comes along the Reb Tzvi Ziditshaver. Okay, the Heilige Tzvi Ziditshaver, and he says the Rashi Tevis of the matana, the mincha that he was sending to Esav was rega af. Izim, rechelim, gemalim is rega, and param asainais is af. Okay, these are all females, which is taikif hadin. We spoke about females being taikif hadin. That was last week we spoke about it.
Either last week or also last year.
Yeah, females being taikif hadin, and Memela, he says this is what he was doing. He's being ma'ayer for Esav rega af, but at the same time he needs a chayim b'tzoynei. So he says the gematria of Vayishlach is also the gematria rega af. Okay. However, at the same time, he had to be mecham for himself. That for him, for Klal Yisrael, has to be chayim b'tzoynei. Okay. So again, Vayira Vayetzer, he was afraid that if Esav would come and kill him, but he was also afraid Vayetzer that if he kills Esav, it's going to backfire. Mele, he had to be mechavin at that point for all the shames that are going to be that for Klal Yisrael, for the tzaddikim, it's going to be a midah of chesed. The Medrash starts off in the beginning of this week's Parsha. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav al Esav achiv. The Medrash starts off Hadu d'chsev Kuma Hashem ba'pecha, Kuma Hashem haishieni. He says the Medrash talks about two kumas. Kuma Hashem ba'pecha, Hashem arise with your anger, midas hadin, and Kuma Hashem v'haishieni, Hashem arise to save me. So you have a kuma that is being used for a lashon of for a midas hadin, Kuma Hashem ba'pecha, and then you have a pasuk of Kuma Hashem v'haishieni, which is to be matzal the tzaddikim. So he says again, Vayishlach is a gematria Kuma Hashem. Right? Vayishlach is Kuma Hashem, that the pasuk is telling us that Yaakov is sending rega af, but at the same time he has to have in mind if there's Kuma Hashem ba'pecha, but klapi that there has to be Kuma Hashem v'haishienu. And male, this is the kavanah when he's sending his matanos to Esav, his mincha to Esav. Ultimately, the minchas are to vanquish Esav, to be married Dinam and Esav. At the same time, Vayetzeloi had to be mechav to shemus of rachmanis that are going to be ma'ir rachamim on him and his family. Okay, that is interesting. Imrei Noyam on the with some nice Rosh Tevis. But interesting, it comes out of Zay that we mentioned once upon a time, right? At Bash, Chiluf Isis is Midas Hadin, right? It's not that At Bash is Midas Hadin. At Bash is when you have a shame of Chesed and you mahapich it with At Bash, then it becomes Midas Hadin. If you have something that is Midas Hadin and you mahapich with At Bash, then it's mahapich it to Midas Chesed. So At Bash takes the word, and if it's a din, it's mahapich it to Chesed. If it's a Chesed, then it's mahapich medin. That's what At Bash.
Where does it start from?
Huh?
Is the Chesed ultimately the top? Does A turn B? Does A equal B because B is the opposite of A? Or when you take B and you switch it to A, does that mean that it's
what I'm saying now is you have a word, so the word has its taich. Wherever the word has its taich. So if the taich of the word is a midas hadin, if you mahapich it to ba'at bash, then ba'at bash is it flips the midah. Okay, I forgot. I mean, over here you have these two shemus. It goes from mem and lamed and beis to chesed of yichud chavav shamim. But just we mentioned about tzedakah is not nepach bat bash and Shabbat is not nepach bat bash. And we had another one. What was the third thing we said back in the day? That was not nepach bat bash.
That was the same thing. I think it was
Shabbat and tzedakah, but there was one other one also. I forgot what it was now. Anyway, but that's what comes out of it. That just a review of that subject. It's a little late. Maybe we'll wrap it up. We'll leave off the Sarmish Shaleach. I'll just tell you just very quickly that okay, we'll leave it. It's a long shtick. It's a little bit confusing. Anyway. B'kitzer, Vayishlach is a Parsha, that this is a Parsha that we're supposed to look at and recognize that we're living in the Galus of Esav, and we have to have a Vayira and Vayetzer, right? And we have to fortify ourselves, and we have to take it seriously that Yaakov Avinu did the groundwork for us to overcome the nisyanis of Galus Edom. But ultimately, we have to also be makabel, same avodah of Yaakov Avinu, and we have to live our lives with a yira and a yetzer, and recognize that if we misstep, we have to be bitzar. How can we misstep, right? And we have to constantly be vigilant with a sense of yira, and with this Be'ez Hashem, we will overcome Esav and Galus Edom and be zeichet to Gul Krevim Meheira.